great to see so many people here today. Welcome. I'm going to start out by introducing our board for 2025 and ask everyone to stand as I call their name. I'm Susie Caffey. I'm the president this year. And let's see, let's start with me. Gotta get my list. Martha Fulgham is our president-elect. And Martha is here today signing people in because our vice president of membership, Delana Lane, is not here today. So Martha's doing her job as well. So we miss Delana. Madison Fail is our vice president of programs, and he'll be speaking to us in a few minutes. Jenny Dixon is corresponding secretary. Yay, Jenny. So she's the one who sends out all of our emails. Pam Benoit is here today with her mom. She's our recording secretary. And welcome to you. We're so glad she's here from Indiana. So thanks for being here today. Denise Hamilton is our treasurer. I don't think Denise is here yet. She's going to be a little bit late. She's teaching a class this morning. Christy Bunn, our past president, yay, and she's going to be speaking to y'all in just a minute about the website. Janet Sanders is our member at large. She's in the back. Everybody knows Janet. And Ann Proctor is our treasurer-elect. Yay! I'm glad to have her here too. Our spring show co-chairs are Lois Mash and Sarah Crook, and they're going to be speaking to us today too. So we got a lot to cover. I want to thank our newsletter team. If you haven't read it already, it came out last night. Lisa Pruitt, Janet Sanders, Josh Reverie, and Pam Benoit, they put together a great newsletter with lots of information, so please make sure you read that. The next newsletter will go out in March, is that correct? Okay, I wanted to make sure. So please make sure, if you have something for the newsletter, that you send it to both addresses, and we're going to send an email to let everybody know exactly what to do to enter something into the newsletter. They're just like 3 little things that would be most helpful. Lisa let me know. And I think it'd be easier if we just send out a message to everybody. And if you don't do email, we'll have a little flyer for you too. So with that said, would you like to give our membership report for Delana, Martha? Okay, I've got it up here. Okay. Come on in.
Hey y'all, welcome to the new year. This is great. Good to see so many of you, and some back, and so glad to see them too. We have 5 new members, and some of them are here.
Plus one more.
So we have Fran Bostic, Jenny Cash. Sorry, not my glasses.
Yeah, and would y'all mind standing up?
Yeah, we usually have you stand and tell us a little
Okay.
short
Fran.
thing about what mediums you work in and any little tiny bio.
Okay, my name is Fran Bostic. I live in Hoover. I've been painting about 8 years. And what was that? Oh, acrylics and large abstracts. And I do color, not calm.
Wild color.
Let's see. And then we have Jenny Cash. Is she here?
She'll be here later.
Okay. Sally Clark. Is she here?
Hey,
There's
I was
Sally.
actually a member and then I wasn't, now I am.
So we're going to torture you and make you stand up.
I know. Maybe they won't because I wasn't a member, but it's okay.
When were you last a member?
Sorry?
When were do you remember?
Before I had kids.
Oh, so it's been a while.
2019. Yeah,
Okay.
she's 4 now, or 4 too. I paint with acrylics and oils and oil pastels and all different stuff.
Good, we're glad to have you. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just going ahead. Okay, and then Gina, and
Here.
I'm gonna need help with your last name.
Pronounce your last name.
Sia.
Sia. That's easy
I'm
enough.
Gina. I do landscapes, mostly in soft pastels and acrylic, and I only really started seriously painting probably last year. When I'm not art making, I work at Regions. I manage our volunteer programs and our financial education outreach. And I do more calm and not wild. Maybe I'll follow you. Do more wild stuff.
Okay, welcome Gina.
Soft pastel.
Laura Tamaris. I know Laura. Talk about yourself.
Hi, I'm Laura, first time part of the group officially, and I've been painting since 2019 in oils. I like to do portraits and landscapes, plein air, and have studied under Amy Collins and Amy Peterson, so
good
glad to be
teachers.
part of the group.
Hey, Laura, welcome. Glad to have you. Yeah, has been in our plein air group, and I've enjoyed getting to know Laura. Jennifer Hallman.
I'm Jennifer.
Hallman?
Hallman.
Okay.
And I love color. I paint these little cards to give to people. And I paint with acrylic. I also have a children's book I've written that it's about art and a little hedgehog. If anyone's interested, come see me afterwards.
It's just coming out.
Yeah, today's the first day.
Oh my goodness.
It was complete. The entire project was done here in Birmingham, including being printed here. So I'm excited about that. But it's about a little artist hedgehog that we've probably all been there. Maybe felt a little misunderstood. And it's a book about how she came back to being herself and was able to go out in the world and spread kindness with little cards.
Oh, that's wonderful. Welcome, and I want to see that book.
Yeah, I have a website. And
I would love to see
it.
Is there anyone else who has come in that I might have missed that is new? Anybody else? Okay. I just want to tell y'all, if you haven't signed the list here, please be sure you can just come around and sign. Sign the list because we do our door prizes from that, but it's also for our show to tell us who's been here this meeting, because that counts toward the show. Is that all I'm supposed to do?
Yeah,
I'm filling in for Delaney.
Yeah, except for how many members do we have now
Okay.
and how many did we have?
I know we've had 69 sign up through the website.
Yeah.
So,
I think she has the number. What we ended with, that's what numbers are not my thing.
I had it.
should
Oh,
be 76 officially,
Yeah.
but we've had
It was
100.
right around. Thank you, Pam. We had 155 at the end of December.
Right.
And so far 69 have signed up.
Yeah, so
Okay,
we're
very
well on the way to, because the deadline for, and you can say this, or I can
Well,
say
you're
it.
about to, because
Okay.
I'm about to invite
I'll
you up.
just do it.
So, yeah, let's hear from Christy now. She wants to talk about the website.
Yeah, that kind of falls under website, doesn't it?
Can we just have applause for the website?
Aw. How many of you have created your profile? Yay, look at that. Y'all look around the room and see how many hands are up. That's awesome. So y'all be encouraged, those of you who have not done it yet, that it's not hard. It's really, it's a pretty simple process. And I'm just loving seeing your pictures of your work and your social media handles. That helps us to find you on social media. So, yay. Yeah, I'm tickled that everybody's had an easy time except for Ron. I'm sorry, Ron. We had one issue with checking out, but other than that, everybody's done real well. And if you have questions about how something works or whatever, please feel free to email. You can email the club's main email address, but you can also email me. That video that has been linked in all of the things, And I'm sorry it was so slow, but it took me 2 days to record that thing, y'all. Wild. Anyway, because I had to record it while I was actually signing up for myself so that I could tell y'all all the things. So anyway, but you can speed it, you can watch it on 1.5 speed and it's a lot faster. So. More efficient with your time and, anyway. I want to make sure I tell you all the things. First of all, if you've already put your profile picture there and it's not a square, please try to replace that. You can go to your edit profile page and replace that with one that's closer to a square. Okay, because I didn't realize until they all started popping in how much that would change the look of the entire directory for them all to be different sizes. So it will have a much more uniform and pleasant appearance on the directory pages. And how many of y'all have tried to search the directory for keywords? Nobody. Okay, so that's an important thing on your profile. If you have a specialty or a medium that you prefer, whatever, something that you're known for, whatever it might be. For me, it's architecture, but for you, it may be portraits, or it may be, I don't know, whatever it is for you. Make sure those keywords appear in your profile somewhere, whether it's in your bio. I have now put this happened after the instruction video, but I put a field in for specialties. So you can just actually put those keywords into that field. So if you've already done your profile and you did not put specialties in, go back and fill that field out. So that people, when they come, they can search those things for you. Okay, so square profile, be sure to keep your password and username. If you have paid and have not created your profile, your username should be your email address. So you can go to the member login page and it will allow you to put that email address in, and then you can say forgot password. There's a forgot password right under that big long purple button. The forgot password, and click that and it will send an email to it will shoot you an email to be able to create a password. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Sarah and I have both, like I said, shown for years in our show and others, and have a feel for what it's like, which I think helps our role in this. So for those of you who have shown or this is your first show, reach out to us, because I remember how scared I was at my first show. And the organization has tripled since we all joined the organization, and I can't tell you how much I have learned from the demos, because I still have a pretty active day job and don't have time to go to the classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays yet, but it's still on my bucket list to do that. So life goes by fast. It seems like every week it's already Friday. So I encourage you, and I've just this week also renewed my membership, and Christy has made it so easy for us. I will say I tried 4 times to upload my picture and it just wouldn't, but we'll talk about that later.
You know what? I'm glad you said that, because they need to be JPEGs.
It is,
Okay.
but it may be too big, it's
Maybe.
not square. Yeah, I'll work on that. And you'll find that we have tweaked the show guidelines a little bit, not drastically, so please read through those. We've also, so February 1st is the sign up for the show, and it is first come, first show. And the deadline is now March 21st. So we did extend that. And then, of course, we'll review all the applications, be sure you've met all the guidelines, and if you're a new member, you still have time to be in that show. It just requires, a meeting which if you're here, that qualifies you. And then you have to submit some of your artwork, just for us to be sure you're not an accountant or a law attorney or something. It's not that difficult or that hard to do.
The requirement is 2 meetings, but new members can attend one and then volunteer.
Right,
So-
right, thank you.
Volunteer in what capacity when you volunteer?
They will have a whole slate of things for the show that need volunteers.
Okay.
So, and before the show, before May.
Yes,
So-
we'll be contacting last year's volunteers, so don't delete our phone numbers or email, just because we've given you the heads up. But, and then if you would like to volunteer and you haven't, it takes a lot of volunteers. I had no idea. I just showed up with my artwork every year and somehow, it all came together. So I'm blown away by that, and we'll get more into that in our next meeting in February. I didn't want to give you too much information. The other big change that was approved by the board is we suggested that the show close at 4:30, not 5 o'clock, because Crestline, dinner time is typically at 5. Parents and children all show up at the taco place, and it just makes it difficult, to take the artwork down. Yeah, so.
Find a parking place to move, because we move our cars out from the central area, and then to get your stuff loaded, you have to come back in and find a parking place. So it's.
So, Sarah and I are also meeting with the city in, about a week. We've got an appointment to go over all the things that, we expect of them and they expect of us, so we can report that also in the February meeting. We've asked for more parking, or we will ask for more parking, maybe some more, real estate for outdoor tents. And I guess those of you who haven't shown before, and you'll see this in the information on the website, if you want to show indoors, there are opportunities for that. And when you fill out your application, please tell us there's a place for you to sign up if that's your preference. Also, you can show with a partner, and there's a place for you to tell us who that partner is and what the charges are for that. Is that everything?
The floral arrangement.
Oh, right, so, if you're a volunteer or showing, or in the show, this is our, floral for the show provided by,
Lisa
Lisa
Bailey.
Bailey of Lisa Bailey Designs. And she's the one that did it last year, that when the arrangement was so pretty, she's done it again.
I know, it's
And
gorgeous.
y'all, you don't have to paint the whole thing.
Mm-mm.
You come up with your interpretation.
That's right.
Will there be pictures of that on our Mountain Brook site later?
Yes, we will post that, and it will be here outside on this table until Wednesday, if you wanna come back by.
so your painting will go in the hospitality tent and be juried separately, and you'll get a ribbon for that. I think that's it, unless there aren't any questions for us.
Do you have a date for the show?
Oh, yeah, May 3rd. And for some reason, I kept thinking it was the 2nd, because my 50th high school reunion's on the 2nd. I mean, it seems like everything was on May 2nd. So it's May 3rd from 9 to 4:30. So, I mean, just show of hands on those that might be showing this year. Great. Wonderful. Any maybes? Okay, well, contact us and we'll convince you that, that maybe is ridiculous. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Lois. Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, both of y'all.
Yeah, lots more information to come on that, I'm sure we'll have lots of questions, but thank you so much, Lois. Let's see, Denise is here, so she's gonna give us the treasurer's report.
I know y'all were really waiting
Yeah.
on this. It's your favorite part. So, really quickly, our bank balance at the end of December was $12,126.50. So, I'm available to answer any of your questions if you have them. We made about $5,000 last year on Janet Tillery's portfolio. She donated her portfolio in her will, and so we sold it during the show last year and made about $5,000. So that's why our balance has increased. We raised our dues because we have, as you know, a greater online presence. So that's a little more pricey. So we haven't raised dues in a very long time. But if you have any questions, let me know. And
Thank you. Yeah, and we're still the best game in town, really. Let's see. I have two more announcements, and then I'm going to introduce Madison. Erin Harden. Erin, where are you sitting? Here she is. Erin didn't get this in the newsletter, and she wanted me to let you know. She's got a show opening at the Gadsden Museum February 7th from 5 to 7, and it'll be showing till March. So congratulations. And if you are headed to Gadsden, go to the opening.
Let's see some of y'all sing something.
Mountain Brook Magazine has their best of competition coming up, and we have until January 31st for folks to nominate Mountain Brook Art Association's Art in the Village for the best community event. So, Jenny's going to send out a reminder, but please nominate and then vote for us. We were second last year. Is that right?
Yes. We're second.
Yeah.
The Mystic Halloween Parade beat us.
Oh, the Halloween Parade beat us, so let's see if we can beat them out.
You can vote once a day.
And right now, it's
And
nomination.
get all your relatives to do the same.
Yeah,
But
right
they-
now it's nomination. So Christy, how many people have to nominate?
You have to have a certain number of nominations to even get considered in the vote.
Ah.
So
Okay,
go
so
every day and nominate.
Nominate every day. And I suppose you can just go to Mountain Brook Magazine
Yeah.
online and nominate.
So,
Y'all, in the newsletter, there are so very many classes coming up in various venues in Birmingham. So please take a look at that, take advantage of it. Tim Blanton let me know of one that's coming up this summer at Forstall, and this is an internationally known artist, watercolor artist. His name is Fabio.
Sabrinelli.
Yes. And Tim, do you want to say anything about him?
Just a little bit. He's from Brazil. He's a watercolor artist and just internationally known. He's one of the top 20 watercolor masters in the world. And so we got him to come to Forstall in June for a 3-day class, and he fills up all over the world. So if you can come by and see him, and we're hoping to do a reception for him and some other things. So
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Okay, now I think it's
Can I make one quick
sure.
announcement? I came in late, so I didn't get to.
That's okay.
We've opened up an event place for art, and it's called The Studio at Green Pastures. I've told y'all this before, but now the holidays hit, and now I'm starting back open studios. And the first one is February 25th. That means there's a model, and you just come and paint from 9 to 12, and that's a Tuesday morning. And this time I have a girl with a heart, so it ought to be really, really good.
Cool.
So put that down. And also I'm starting to have workshops there. This is off of the Shelby County Airport exit, not far off that, in case you just want to know. And Amanda Lovett is coming in May. And if you'll just go to, I have a website, the Studio at Green Pastures. There'll be more. I'm working with Seth Haverkamp to come and some other people. Yeah, I know. And so
You have a
you
You have a Facebook page, right?
And we have, yes, and an Instagram.
Okay.
And
Studio at Green Pastures. Is that the name?
Studio at Green Pastures.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Great.
And I don't want to take any more time, but you
Okay,
talk to me after.
Thank you. Thanks for announcing that. Yeah. It's hard to get everything in. So Madison? Come on up.
Good morning, campers. So I think that, I want to say thank y'all for letting me be, what's my title?
Vice President of Program.
That sounds so official.
It is.
Um,
There, do your
Very
best.
happy to be here. Before I get to introducing, I just wanted to say that the board and I put together a very exciting slate of artists that are going to be coming this year. And we've got a lot of interesting people. I think we're going to have a lot of fun. Before I go any further, one of our new members who was not here when we introduced is now here, so I'm going to put Jenny Cash on the spot and ask her to stand up and talk about herself for about 5 seconds.
Well, I'm Jenny Cash. Yeah, I just had a hip replacement, so I just came from physical therapy. But I am in my abstract phase right now with some lots of interesting things and some foils, and my favorite thing to do in life is eat and paint, so. That's what
Two more things. Y'all speak to Jennifer Hallman afterwards. She has a really good studio opportunity if anyone is looking for studio space that is not in their house. So that's something that just came available, so something to think about. Also, I know I sound like a broken record, but the Loyola show in Mobile, the deadline is the 26th of January, so you still have time to apply.
Get on it.
When putting together the slate of artists for demos this year, I was really trying to think about some fun and dynamic people. Next month, we have Ian Stewart, watercolorist, which is going to be really fun. We've got Ahmad Austin, Caleb Clark, and I've got a few other artists that I'm still waiting to get some concrete dates for, but fingers crossed that they can do it. But we're starting with a dear friend of mine who I've known for, we just decided, I think it's been over 10 years. Yeah, let's go with that. That's fine. Some of y'all might know her as Alisa Koch, but her name is Alisa Beck. She's a very talented oil painter from Montgomery. She teaches, her workshops and classes sell out pretty much instantly now. She's been doing a lot of great work at the Kelly in Wetumpka, is it? And she's just a dear friend. We've shown together, we've painted together, and we've had a lot of fun. So I think that she's really going to enjoy what she does today. We're going to move her easel over, but I'll let Alisa come up. And she's not nervous at all.
You did a video for us in 2020.
I did.
A video demo.
I did.
It's still on our
yes.
YouTube page.
I wasn't nervous then either. It's funny, my husband always asks me, why do you get nervous about these things? I said, well, it's like going to a new job. You know, you have new people that you're working with, you have new equipment, you have new spaces, you don't know what you're working with, you have traffic, yeah, all those fun things. But I made it here, thankfully. But thank you so much for coming today, and I'm really lucky to know Madison. He is a fabulous painter, and I'm really honored to be here. I just like to paint, and I just like that. I like to share my knowledge with people, and I'm just really fortunate that people like what I do, and not always, but but some of the time. But I have been an oil painter since college. I went to Huntington College in '94, and as soon as I touched oils, I just knew that that was my first love. I just knew that's what I wanted to do forever. I wanted to paint. Did lots of things over the years, but I dove back into oil painting several years ago and started doing it professionally. Started diving into acrylics because a lot of people that came to my classes said, I love the oils, but I just don't want to work with oils. I want to work with acrylics. So I had to learn how to use acrylics, and so I could start to teach that. And it was a challenge for me, honestly, because of the quick drying times, which I'm sure a lot of you like that capability. So recently, I have actually been doing multiple media. I've been doing watercolor, which, you know, a lot of people say is so tricky and hard. And yes, it is, but it's also very versatile. So if you haven't tried watercolors, I would say give them a try. They are so fun and transportable. And I think Martha and some of the other plein air painters have encouraged me to try watercolors just because they are transportable, and especially for plein air painting. So what I want to talk to you about today, I don't know that I can finish a painting in 2 hours, but I'm going to do my best. But what I did was, I don't know if you guys can see over here, I have a deer painting. It is wet, so you guys probably don't want to touch it. You can come up and look at it, but oils, as you know, take a long time to dry. But of course, because of this cold weather, they take even longer. But also, because it's cold wax, it takes even longer. Cold wax is a medium that you put into the oil paints so that you can do some fun things with it. So I'm going to show you some of those things today. But I also want to talk about how I got to this point of using or getting into this technique, and it's through the use of watercolors and acrylics. How many guys have used jellies before? Oh my goodness. Okay, so you guys, I know that it's a new fad kind of thing. It's probably like the pouring art to some of you. They are amazing and wonderful. The reason I find them so amazing is because...
Explain what a jellies is.
I'm sorry, yes. So a jelly is a flexible, see-through material. I'm sorry I didn't bring one with me because I wasn't going to demonstrate this. But you've seen a lot of TikTok videos and Instagram videos and things like that where people will do a lot of collage work with them. They do a lot of printing an image and then transferring the image on the plate. But I was not interested in that. I was interested in what the material was and what else it could do. So I started playing with it in my studio with acrylics. And what I started finding was that it made some interesting marks that were very fresh. And so I started making my studies out of acrylics and jellies. So I use it like a printmaking process. And then I recently took a stencil making class from R.C. Hagens, Richard Cecil Hagens, if any of you guys know him. He's also a Montgomery artist. And it kind of inspired me to start using stencils a little bit, not in the way that they're traditionally used, but I'm going to show you a little bit of that today. And so I've combined it with my oil techniques in a little different way, but utilizing the cold wax. And so I really like some of the effects that it's getting. Now I'm still kind of new to what I'm doing, so if it doesn't come across as very skilled, you'll have to forgive me. And I am nervous about this demo, but I'm very excited about sharing this knowledge with you, and just I want you to feel like you can go home and try something new, because it's really inspiring to get out a different medium that you're not used to. It's kind of like coming to a demo with a bunch of people you don't really know, and trying to do something that you think you're going to be able to do, and you have a different outcome. And because of that different outcome, you start to see things a little differently. So what I've been doing is making, let me grab this. I've been making these small little acrylic jelly press stencils. So this is a printmaking process. So it's a one-time, one-shot. You lay the paper on, you pull it up, and you see what you get kind of scenario. But I do a several printing process on the same paper. And so I do it with stencils. So I draw my own stencils. I am not a fabulous drawer like our realist painter and artist over here, Madison. He is the guru on that. But I do like to make my own drawings. I will make my own drawings, and then I'll make my own stencils from there. So I cut out a bunch of stencils. And what I did was I used newsprint, which you guys probably have used newsprint before, right? So just a newsprint pad. You don't have to get a large pad like this, but I got a large one so I could cut several stencils. But it's a very versatile and inexpensive way to cut stencils. You can also use newspaper if anybody still gets a newspaper.
No.
So then I draw my deer out, and then I use tracing paper to preserve my stencils. So I'll draw the deer and I'll draw other stencils, and I use tracing paper just so that if I lose my stencil, because newsprint is very flimsy, and after you use it a few times, it's gonna tear. So I'll draw it so that I can redraw it with carbon paper onto another surface. So, you know, you can go to the store and buy a stencil that's ready-made, but I would encourage you to make your own stencil because it's gonna be unique, and plus you're gonna have your own designs that you can use. And you can use them multiple times. So once I take them and I cut them out onto the newsprint. So then I have, you know, the negative shapes, right? But then I also have the positive shapes. So I save all these and keep them so I can reuse them. So I keep a little bag of them. And I will say this kind of goes back to my, when I was younger, before I had kids, I worked for a clothing manufacturer out of Tallahassee, Alabama, and we designed children's clothes, and I was the embroidery digitizer. So I would design the embroidery designs, and we did everything from scratch. We were the design team, and we would go to New York and showcase these designs to buyers so that they could purchase for mass production. And there's something about this that kind of brings me back to that. So if anybody is into quilting, pattern making, you know, just any of that, this is something that you can definitely utilize in fabrics or fiber arts, you know, so it's a fun little method. And then overlaying and overlapping those stencils is kind of a fun way to get a new twist on your art also. So I'm gonna move over here and try to go through my process. Should the microphone move with me, or?
Can we pass the deer one?
Oh yeah, so we could pass this around if you guys wanna look at it. And I will say this little deer was made with just mixed media paper and just cheap acrylic paints. So the fun thing about jellies is you can use cheap paints. So it's a really, I find the process very meditative, but I also find it to be very economical. So if you want something fun to do with other people, it's a great way to have other people around and you do a lot of stuff. It's very messy though, I will say that. I'm not a painter that gets paint on my hands, but I do get paint on my hands in that process. Okay, so what I'm using today is oils. And I'm gonna put out, I just use a limited palette, just a basic red, yellow, blue, and white. I'm right-handed. And I'm going to, what I did here on the canvas, I'm using just a wood panel board. Has anybody ever worked on wood before? Yeah, they're a lot of fun. They're very sturdy, but as you know, wood is not as flexible as a canvas. So some of my tools are brayers, palette knives, squeegees, things like that. And in utilizing some of those tools, I find that the wood can be helpful, but also sometimes it's not as helpful because it doesn't have that nice bounce that a canvas can have. So I decided for this demo, I was going to do something totally new that I'd never done before. And so Wendell, who's my friend here with me today, this is Wendell, everybody. Wendell! Hey. We have Wendell Wednesdays in my studio at home. And we got to experiment with this process yesterday, thank goodness. And it was a total disaster for the first 4 hours. But after that, we kind of figured it out. But we had a lot of fun because every time I would try something, Wendell was there to say, "What if we do this?" And so it's always fun to do it with somebody. But I did. This was the end result that I came up with on the end over there. And like I said, that's cold wax and oils, but it's utilizing this same process. I will show you some of the tools. So this is cold wax medium. Has anybody ever used cold wax? Do we have any oil painters in here? Okay, great. And so how many out of the oil painters have used cold wax? Just a few? Okay. It's not a scary.
Can you use it with oil or can you use it with acrylic?
No, you can't use it with acrylics. You can just use it with oils. But there's other things that you
can use it as a varnish on watercolors.
Yes, you can. Yes, that is a wonderful technique. Yeah, you can use it as a varnish and not have a nice buffed, nice sheen to it. This medium is not scary if you guys ever want to try it. You really just have to take a 50% amount of the medium to 50% of the amount of your paint and mix it in. And it makes a nice, dull sheen to it, so it takes all the high gloss out of the oil. And so oil painters that have been using it really like it because a couple of reasons. One, because it takes that sheen out, but also because it kind of encapsulates the paint so that you can layer the next layer of paint wet into wet without it pulling out the paint or mixing in with the underneath layers. And you'll kind of see that when I'm applying that today. It's very cool. It's a very cool. It has helped me in understanding more about working wet into wet with oils, but also I get a more sophisticated look to my work, and I'm also able to work a little bit more realistically, although I'm always pushing to be more abstract. I don't want realism necessarily in my work. I want people to be able to identify objects, but I want people to get an emotional feeling from my work, and I don't want to necessarily show off my skill set of, you know, how great I can draw something, although I would love to have that skill set. But anyway, these are some...
He can paint realistically very well.
Yes. These are my tools. This is a brayer, and this comes from Cold Wax Academy. It's a little bit softer brayer than your typical speedball brayer that you might buy at like Hobby Lobby or Michael's or Wonderful Forestall or Alabama Art Supply. So this one is going to give you a softer touch. This one is going to be a little bit harder. I work with either one. They both work fine for me. But I also use these. These are called squeegees, although I know a lot of you probably use squeegees in different forms. But these also are designed and manufactured by Cold Wax Academy, and you can buy them from there. And they have multiple sizes, multiple range of sizes. This is also a squeegee. I picked this up at Michael's the other day. I thought it was very cool. I'm not real excited about what it doesn't do, but I am excited about what it does do. And it does scrape really well. It does not lay paint, so I don't use it for laying paint. This one I love to lay paint with, especially with acrylics. I love this tool with acrylics because it gives a little bit of transparency, but also opacity, and I can get I am not a dilly-dallyer when it comes to painting. I like to get large areas of paint on very quickly, and so I like to use these larger tools because of that, because it just lets me get it on there. I also use, of course, a palette knife. If any of you guys have ever done my workshops, you know I talk about the rock and roll with the palette knife, holding it in between your fingers and not down here and doing a chokehold. You know, it's not jiu-jitsu, it's artwork. And then I have these paint shapers and catalyst tools. These are great. I know a lot of you are probably using these or have used these. They're great for putting on paint. They're great for architectural work. They're great for getting edges. They're also great for removing. And of course I have my brushes. My brushes get beat up. am not easy on my brushes. So I go through brushes a lot, and so I like cheap brushes to expensive brushes. I don't normally buy an expensive brush just because I do go through them so quickly, and because I'm not much of a brush user. I was traditionally more of a hog hair bristle brush user, and then I moved to palette knife, and now I'm really finding that I love squirrel hair, natural hair bristle brushes a lot more, but I still love a cheap, $2.99 brush, because when it frays out, it makes the best tree shapes. So I love those. I have an arsenal of those. And then, of course, these little guys, these little paint eraser guys, if you guys haven't tried these, they're wonderful. Wonderful for putting on paint and then drawing in shapes, so they have all kinds of wonderful uses. One thing I'm gonna say about this process today is, after we went through this day yesterday of coming up with this technique, I thought to myself, well, I hope that nobody's gonna sit back and say, well, why didn't she just paint that? Like, why didn't she just do it with brushes? Or why didn't she just draw in the deer and paint it in? And I'm hopeful that you'll see that the technique itself does provide something different, whether or not the end result looks much different. I'm hoping that you'll see that the process itself, which I am very much about these days, as I turned 50 this past year, I am more about the process of art making and the community of art making than I am about having a finished product. And I know that we all want to sell our art, we all want to carry it around and show it to people, but I have found that making the art and doing a lot of that, just a ton of that, you will produce art. You will produce great art, and art that you want to look at, which is more important than selling it or having other people look at it, right? Okay, so I'm gonna start this process. If you can't hear me, please feel free to holler at me. I'm gonna try to talk as loud as I can. I'm working on a glass palette. I'm gonna work with oils. The other thing I want to say about the oils I'm using is I'm using cheap oils. The nice thing about cold wax is it's a binder. It already has binders in it. So when you use cheap oil paints, like student grade paints, you've already got a lot of binder in there as well. And so the combination of the binders just fluffs up your paint really nicely, and it just really grabs to the canvas as well. I don't like to use my expensive paints when it comes to cold wax. It takes a lot of paint, a lot of paint, and sometimes the technique, like today, you may see that it may not come out as a totally finished result, because it works better if you give it days. If you come back to it another day or a couple of days later, because it has a tack up period, and that tack up period will allow you to go back in and carve back into the cold wax, which is really lovely. Okay, so let me just get started, and like I said, if you guys have any questions or you can't hear me, just let me know. I am a little nervous. I might get a little quiet as I'm trying to think, but I will try to answer any questions you guys have. Oh, and this is a wood panel that I put golden gesso on. And the reason I put a gold background is because I want to be able to scrape back down and reveal some of the light. Now, I'm not going to get back to this original light, but I can lay more paint on to retrieve that nice light if I want to. But that's one of the reasons why I did it this gold. Now the gold has a little bit of sheen and it might bother me a little bit, but I think the low lighting in here might kind of combat that as well. Oh, two things before I start to paint. I do teach classes in Montgomery at the Kelly, which Madison mentioned. Please check their website. They have wonderful shows if you guys are looking for places to enter artwork. It's a wonderful place, community space. And also, I'm going to be teaching at Forstall, so be looking for those classes. And I teach a variety of things. So if there's something you're interested in learning, grab 3 or 4 people, give me a call, and we can make a class. So I teach everything from acrylics to watercolor to oils, cold wax, palette knife, typical mediums. I teach all the mediums in oils. I teach abstract. I teach, landscapes mostly. So. Okay, so let's get started. And if anybody needs to stand up, take a break, don't feel like I'm concerned.
And follow her on Instagram. Alisa _Beck _art, I think.
Yes, Alisa Beck Art is my handle. Okay, so I'm gonna use just blue, alizarin. I'm using French ultramarine, and then I'm gonna use alizarin crimson, which is not my favorite color, but for this, I kind of liked it. And even though this is a transparent yellow, I kind of liked it for what I used it for. It's a Windsor pale yellow hue. I will say, don't rely on it for making your great greens. It is not a stable color at all. But for this purpose, I had it in the studio. I'm using it. And I am using Winton, Winsor Newton, which is listed as Winton when you go to get it at the store. And you can also use the Gamblin 1980 student grade. If you're looking to get really nice mixtures of colors though, like if you're not using straight out of the tube colors or you're not real confident with your color mixing, I would definitely say go to the more, a brand that you're more confident with, which is not the student grade brands. You can use Winsor Newton, but just go to the professional grade or go to Gamblin or go, I would not use my Williamsburg or my Richardson with cold wax unless I was working very small and I was painting with a brush. I would not do this technique with my expensive paints because I don't know when it's going to end. And a little tube of $60 paint I would not be happy losing. But anyway, okay, so one thing I don't have with me is a can opener. So you might have a pocket knife? A key? Yeah. Here you go. Thank you.
You just can't think of it. I think that's.
Thank you. I totally left it sitting on my desktop. Okay.
And now I know what you're talking about. Okay.
All right, so cold wax is just a nice thick paste. It's clear, white, but it dries clear. It's really sturdy, but it's like furniture wax. Have any of you ever waxed furniture? So it's just like furniture wax. You can make your own cold wax also. There are recipes out there, and there's a wonderful book that's put out by the Cold Wax Academy that you can learn all things cold wax. So I'm going to put a chunk of this out here.
Right. Cold Wax Academy.
That's right, Cold Wax Academy. Okay.
So you're just mixing half and half, right?
So I'm going to mix half of the wax with half of my oil paints. So first I'm going to determine, so what's my first step, right? That's the first thing I've got to do. I think what I want to do first, which is kind of backwards of what most oil painters think about, which is working dark to light, right? We normally put our darks in first. So I'm actually going to put some thin layers of light on here. Now, sometimes I'm always preaching to people, don't paint your lights in and let them dry and then come and paint your darks over them, right? But if anybody does that, I'm sorry. But with cold wax, it encapsulates that paint, and it also provides that ability for you to layer those colors so it doesn't pick up the paint quite as much as it does when you're doing brush work or with other mediums. So, okay. So I'm going to layer in with some lights, and I think, so my idea here, which I hope will work, is basically this. I just did an outline. I don't know if you guys can see this, but it's just an outline of deer. And this may change as I start to put them on here. I just did basic shapes of all the deer, and I want them to be on I want them to be in shadow, and I want light behind them. So much like the one I did up here. So I'm going to probably put a nice line of light through here and brayer on some color that I can go back into. Okay, so I'm going to start with yellow and white just to get a nice light color. I don't have anything to compare this to right now, so I'm just going to put some light down. I want it to be pretty light, but I don't know how light I need to go just quite yet. And with cold wax, it can be transparent and dull down after you put a few layers on, so I have to worry about that a little bit also. Okay, so I'm gonna take my little brayer and I'm gonna roll out the paint, and it's really thick and pasty, so it can be, if you're an acrylic painter, it can be a little daunting to paint with oils because they are so thick and they don't spread quite as nicely as acrylics do. But okay, but they'll stay where you put them. Okay, so I'm gonna roll in this general area with my yellow, and I'm just gonna go along with this brayer. Now this brayer, because it's a little harder brayer, it does, when it dries out from the paint, it does have a little bit of a curve to it. So this flat board is giving me these little gaps because of the way that my brayer is curved. So I'm already starting to find a little issue with that, but I just know that I just gotta keep putting paint on. So you can see how opaque, nice and opaque that is. And I'm sorry if you guys over here can't see that, but it's nice and opaque. So I've already got some of my gold, covered up. So that's a nice relief. And that's what I wanted. Okay, so now I'm going to create some more light in my sky. Here we go. So I'm going to make an orange, and I'm just using alizarin and yellow. And even though this matches my gold, I want this wet paint on here. So that's why I'm brayering it on. And as you can see, this process can go very quickly. It's not a dilly-dally kind of process. It's not a slow process, which I like. If you like working big like Madison, this is a great way to get coverage on really quickly. And especially with acrylics, for my acrylic painters. Haven't figured out a way to do it with watercolors yet. Okay, so now I'm going to go back over between my yellow, my light yellow, and my orange. I'm going to go between that with some more just pure yellow. Okay, So now I've got some variation in there, a little bit of color. Now I want to think about the ground color. So I know I want my deer to be dark, and I'm working with blue and red, so I know that they're going to be a purple hue. So my ground needs to be something that's complementary of these colors. So I'm going to go with just more of an orange down here to go with the orange and the yellow and the purple, just to keep it a safe color combination. You of course can play around with those color combinations and go with colors that you like. So I need palette area, so all I'm doing is scraping this paint up and puddling it up to the side so I don't have to lose any of my paint. You know, if you're working with acrylics, as you know, you have a tendency to lose your paint. All right, so I want to be able to work with dark color, so I'm just going to clean the light color off.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
How long does that puddle of paint that you've mixed stay usable? Like if you were to put it in a palette after you're done and it's extra?
It'll stay usable all day.
All day.
You could use it possibly the next day, but you would have to add some Gamsol to it because it does start to stiffen up. That's one of the things. I have a love-hate relationship with cold wax because it does have this stiffening that happens after a quick period of time. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna mix. I'm sorry, I said I was gonna mix an orange. Let me do that. So I'm gonna take my yellow and a little bit of red and my cold wax. So I'm mixing half and half, 50%.
So how do you decide how much wax to mix in?
You just want to have 50% of the ratio of the paint to 50% of the ratio of the wax.
Okay.
And you want to look for a sheen. If you have any of a sheen to it, you just add more cold wax to it. You can add more wax than 50%. I usually start with a little bit less and then add more. If you do more, you're causing more transparency, so you just have to be aware of that. Okay, so pretty orange. This may be too vibrant for my painting, but I'm just gonna go with it. So I'm gonna take the orange and I'm just gonna brayer this on. So as you can see, there's no special skill or magic here, just putting something on the surface to get a little texture and a little paint. And the more you brayer on, of course, the darker it can get. So I kind of like this variation and this stage, but I have acrylic underneath and I don't necessarily want an acrylic base to be coming through because it is also that gold. I do want it to kind of intermingle with my oils, so I want to make sure I get at least a nice haze over this. But I think in cold wax it's called a veil of color. So I want to make sure I get at least a veil of color over all those little areas. Okay, so now I've got my grounding area, I've got my sky, my light. So now I would go back to my stencil and start to look and say, okay, well, where do I want everybody? I mean, this is kind of what I designed for the layout, but after I started looking at it, I was like, oh, this one's too big, that one's too small, that needs to move over. But we're just gonna go with what we have, right? So I'm going to take my stencil of my big guy here, because I think that would be fun to start with.
You use an X-Acto knife to cut it out?
Yes, yeah. Sometimes not so sharp, as we discovered yesterday, didn't we? That you got to have a sharp blade to work with. And I did kind of accommodate for corners so that I'd know my positioning of where my stencil would go. So I know that when I lay him on here, that he needs to be positioned about from this corner over. So I'm gonna lay this on, and I'm just gonna fold this over the top right here, so he'll lay on there. Now he's a pretty large stencil. I'm not used to working with one that's so large, but this will just lay right on that cold wax, and you don't have to worry about it lifting the cold wax or becoming sticky. It is going to have some paint on it, but you don't have to worry about it destroying your painting underneath. Especially if you use newsprint, and if you're using cold wax. You can't use this technique with other mediums in oil because it will mess up your paint. Okay, so I'm sticking him on there, and then I'm going to take, I want him to be pretty dark, so I'm going to take a blue and alizarin. I'm going to make a lot of this.
Is there a reason for newsprint?
Yeah, as opposed to
Like a more permanent thing that wouldn't break down so
flex,
easily.
yeah, because when you're using only in this technique, like if you want to do stencils with another technique, using something that's more stable would be fine. But because you're working one with the oils and with the brayer, you need something that's really flexible and that doesn't have much surface between your brayer and the underneath, the panel underneath.
In other words, thickness, the thickness of
Yes,
it. You want
yeah.
it paper, like.
Yes, you want it as thin as possible, as thin and as flexible as possible. So you can cut stencils like out of poster board or out of mylar or out of, different variety of materials that you can save and preserve and use, or cardstock, whatever. But I have found that when I do that with the oils, one, the brayer can't get in between. You don't get that nice laying of the paint on the next surface.
The brayer's sitting up on this cardboard
Yes,
thickness.
right.
Okay.
And so you can't get, not that I want to get all the way to the edges necessarily, but I just can't get enough paint on the surface to make anything happen. We experimented with that a lot yesterday, didn't we? So, and that's what the jellies have taught me about working with stencils also, is that there are different mediums and different tools that you need for everything you want to do. And I think that's why art is so exciting, right? Because you always find something new and unique that you relate to that maybe the next person may not, or may relate differently. Okay, so this is pretty purple. I'm going to add a little yellow to it just to tone it down some. I don't want him so purple. And that's still a little purple, so I'm going to add more yellow. Okay, so that's pretty good. All right, so I'm going to lay this down, and then I'm going to check the time and see how we're doing on time.
It's 11:20, so
Okay,
you're good.
Okay. Okay, so I've got some paint on my brayer. I'm going to actually remove a little bit of the paint because I don't want that much paint on there. Okay, so I like to start in the middle of the object and work my way up and down, because I want a little bit of light up here and a little light down here. So I may actually not want to cover the whole thing. So I like that this brayer is giving me some gaps in it, that, it's bowing out on the edges. So you know how sometimes your tools are doing something funky you don't like, but then you start to learn how to work with them. It's kind of like having a new roommate, So, okay, so I'm going to roll this on, and I want to start on the surface of the stencil and roll over. And I want to have a light touch at first, and then I can drive a little harder if I need to. Okay, so he's taking the paint pretty well, but as you can see, I've got this gap that's happening here, so I realize I need more pressure. and I'm gonna go in a different direction. And I don't know if any of you paint with oils, you would not be able to do that on a regular oil painting. I mean, I love that you can lay these paints together and have them sit on top of each other. So I can even go back and forth a little bit. It's gonna start to blend the paint a little bit, which I really don't necessarily want. So I have to be careful of that. But I can continue to brayer over this, just picking up more paint.
So it's the wax that's making it possible.
Yes, the wax is what's making it possible. And of course, the stencil is going to pick up and lift. I just have to be cautious of that and wary of that. But I think he's big enough that it's not going to be too much of an issue.
You can use cold wax as a varnish as well, right?
Yes.
Does that, and it gives a matte appearance?
Yes.
I've known a lot of very traditional portrait painters that have done that.
Yeah, Alana used to do that.
I noticed when you picked up the purple, you didn't clean off the brayer. You just put it on top of the yellow, right?
Yes.
Is that how you normally do it? Or do you
Like when I rolled the yellow and then I didn't clean it off between the yellow and picking up the purple, because I didn't have a lot of yellow left on there. Yes, sometimes I will. Like I'm not a what would be the term? I'm not a
Meticulous?
a purist. Thank you. I'm not a purist when it comes to painting, but I do recommend when people are learning to paint to try to be as methodical in their process so they understand what's happening. But because I feel like this is all fresh on my mind, I know what I can get away with. Okay, so now we get to lift and reveal, right? So this is exciting. Ooh. Oh, he turned out so lovely. Yay. Wow, thank you for the clapping. That's awesome. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys, when you come up here, you can look a little closer and you'll start to see some of the paint from underneath reveal through. And this is where you can get a little bit more abstract with your work. And I think that's why I've fallen in love with this process and I want to explore it more because, yes.
I don't mean to interrupt. I was
No.
going to ask, so as it dries, do the paints meld more? Do you know? Or
No,
does it actually
they stay where they
it
are.
stays? Okay.
Yeah.
Because of the wax.
That's because of the wax. They will stay exactly where they are right now. They're not going to pour. They're not going to run down your canvas. Another product you can use that's great is liquid impasto or oleo pasto. Those are great for impasto works, and you could I haven't tried it, but you might be able to do this type of work with that also because it encapsulates the paint and it holds it there. Okay, so let's do another stack of deer, okay? Okay, so this one's supposed to go behind them, and I really should have done her first, but what I found yesterday was that I kind of like doing the light and the dark mixed in because then it gives me more of that abstract feel and look. So even though somebody tells you, okay, you're supposed to layer the darks and then the lights and then this and that, why not just try something different, right? So let's try her, and she's going to be behind him. She is here. Okay, so we're going to fold this over, and yes, this technique I probably should wear gloves with because I do wind up touching the paint a little bit more because of the stencils. So I would recommend that if you're an oil painter.
Normally, do you work flat?
I work in a variety of
Seems like it'd be
formats.
easier flat.
Yeah, it probably would. It probably would. But we got to do a demo, right? Okay, so So we're gonna do her a little bit lighter. So I'm just gonna add some light into this purple. I don't want her too light, but I want her to be different than him, but I also don't want her to be as light as the background. So I've got to make sure that she falls into a different value category. Okay, so a little purple. I'm going to add a little bit of blue just to be on the safe side. And add my wax in. Okay, she may work. This may work. And if you refer to your objects as he or she's, then you can relate to them better. Okay, so we're gonna roll on some wax. I will say a thin layer of wax always works best first, and then you can go thicker. Okay, so we're gonna start about the middle of her. And of course there I'm getting my gap again. And in fact, I think I'm gonna switch my brayer to this one. So I'm gonna go to this one. I do have some smaller brayers, but I want to make sure that it looks like it's a continuation of paint on the surface. And that's why I'm kind of rolling from one area to another. Okay. I think that may work. Let's see what she does. Okay, we ready? I like the clapping. We can clap. Okay, let's see.
Oh, nice. Really nice.
Cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Okay, so I won't bore you with much more, but I do want to do this little set of deer that's over here. And normally I would continue to complicate this painting with more layers. So let's do another set of deer, and then I may take some feedback and see what you guys think we should do next. How about that? Okay, so we have this set of deer right here, and they're gonna go in this corner there. Okay, nice. Nice, I think that'll be fun, huh? Okay, so I'm gonna tone down the color just a little bit for this other set of deer, because we don't want them to be, we don't want them to have quite the attention that the male and the female do. I don't know, are we any deer lovers, deer hunters in here? Like, what do we have? We have deer hunters.
I grew up with a deer hunter.
Yeah.
My dad.
Yeah, so it's amazing. I'm doing this deer thing because I love animals and I love deer. But I wanted to start incorporating an object into my landscapes, and I love the idea of animals, but I wanted to still keep that mystery and that elusiveness, and what's more elusive than a deer. But I started watching a lot of hunting videos because they are constantly watching deer. You know, they're watching the mannerisms of deer, they're understanding their environment, their habitats. They know when deer are well, not well. You know, there's all these ins and outs. And so I'm starting to understand from the perspective of a hunter, which is really interesting. But also, a friend of mine recommended to read The Yearling. Has anybody ever read The Yearling? Oh my gosh,
the movie, but
saddest book ever.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it's just an interesting perspective. Okay, so I'm gonna roll over these guys, and again I'm gonna use this smaller brayer. But I think I'm gonna start to add a little bit of variation in these guys, just so that because there are a few more of them, and I want to have a little bit more light maybe coming through. So I want more of this, what they call a veil of color, which is where you have the softer brayer activity,
So are you using a lighter touch to apply that?
I'm
or-
using less paint on the brayer.
Okay.
Yeah, you just want to roll it more and have it less thick. Now you can roll over several times and get more color. So every time you roll, you get thicker coverage. And then of course you could pick up other colors and add those into that. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. I may not have covered that ear enough though. Let's see. I like the silhouette up against the light, so I want to make sure I have some of those. Okay, so now we have these guys. Yay! That's fun. Okay, so let's have some feedback. What do you think it needs now?
Grass.
Some grass. Oh, wonderful. Okay, so I actually.
What was that?
Some grass. Somebody said it needed grass. So look what I did. Okay, so we're gonna put
Foliage then.
foliage. Yeah.
That's not grass, that's foliage.
Yes. Yes. So I have this really bad habit when I'm getting feedback from people. I don't know if you're like me, but if you tell me that it needs more yellow, then I'm going to look for a different color and add that. I don't know what that is. Maybe it's my mama in me. I'm not real sure. But always tell people that even though somebody looks at your painting and they say, well, your deer needs to be bigger or it needs to move over here, then maybe actually that's not the problem. Maybe it's something else. So I always try to look for the something else because I want to make sure that that's not really the problem. Okay, so what color? That's a good question. What color should we do the foliage? So we have the dark purple. Brown, some browns? Okay.
Burnt orange.
Burnt orange. Okay. So maybe we'll do a little bit of
I was
both.
thinking red.
Red would be fun. So red would really dominate, right?
Yeah, it would.
Okay, so let's do a little bit of a brown. I have this yucky brown right here.
Yucky
So
brown.
does it need to be darker because it's in the front, or is it going to take too much attention away from our fella?
Mid-value.
Those are all good questions, right? Like that's something good to think about. But since we're experimenting, okay, so we said some browns, a little bit more blue in that.
Alyssa, can I interrupt just a second?
Absolutely.
Calling out some names.
Oh.
For door prizes, so she can continue, but if you hear your name, come up here. Just gonna do a few.
All right, that sounds like fun.
Did you make your animals smaller so you could have like a depth perception type thing?
Yeah. Yeah, and I still think they could be a little smaller. Even push
I
back a
can
little.
see it. No, I can definitely tell. I was just curious.
Yeah, thank you. I did. Okay, so I'm gonna try this brown. I don't know if this is brown enough. We'll try it. Brown
How do
with
you,
other
how do you
colors.
keep it from having seepage around your stencils? Is it because the
Because
wax
there's
is tacky?
Because of its tackiness and because there's that gap, that separation of the width of the paper versus. And let's see. Let's pass around a little piece of paper so you guys can feel. So this is newsprint. So you can see it's not real thick, but it does have some sturdiness to it.
It's thicker than I thought it was.
And look, I just tore that.
Yep.
One. Just went.
Oh, well.
More eye stuff now.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Tim Landon?
Oh, Tim! Yay!
There he is.
Don't
When you're rolling it, you go in one direction before, like, to make sure it's kind of stuck.
Yeah, and especially if I'm using smaller stencils, I'll have to hold those a little closer to there. So I do wind up getting, that's what I was saying, I would recommend wearing gloves because I do wind up getting paint on myself. And I do like the variety of directions, added in there. but, let's see, let's go a little bit darker on this one. And we said brown, and what was the other color? Red, okay, let's add a little bit of red into this. And of course, we don't have a real red, we have a alizarin here, which is more of a purple red. Let's just try.
Look at Alisa's Instagram. I love the way she paints balloons.
Oh, yeah, I do a balloon painting class. That's always fun. And I do that in acrylics.
Janice Piper?
Yay, Janice! Alright, let's see. Oh, the red was nice. Yeah. I like this. That's kind of cool. I like this. Okay, so last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how a veil of color can actually help tone down and bring everything together a little bit, and then we'll wrap up. Okay. So I'm going to utilize just kind of what I've got on my palette.
Yes. Would you add something else with a paintbrush, or would you just do it all?
Yes, definitely, and other tools probably, but just because of the time constraint, I just thought it'd be fun to show you just stenciling.
I noticed on the other one had some gold that looked really pretty.
Yeah, I definitely went back in with brushwork on that one. Yep. Okay, so.
You're adding this like final layer. Do you ever do that between stencils? Like
if I were to do that with what?
between the stencils, like before like.
Oh yeah. So I'm definitely not a real strict method type of person. I go front to back and within my method all the time. And in fact, there's usually, I'll show you a little bit of pulling away paint here in just a second, so you guys can see that. But I like multi-techniques, and I like to not have such a restricted process. It just keeps me on my toes. Okay, so I'm going to add this veil of color. And the pressure.
Jenny Whitaker?
And the pressure is very light, yes.
Jenny Whitaker?
Jenny Whitaker? There you go. Hey y'all, I just wanted to mention that if you can't see, if you're in the back, please feel free to walk up and walk around. You don't have to stay seated. And I know it's hard to hear because we don't have our microphone yet, but if you will, just come on up if you want to get a better look.
Well, I wonder if that could turn just a little bit one for a second.
That's a good idea. I was kind of wondering that myself.
Denise just paid me back too, so I'll tear this one up.
Yeah, just tear that up.
Okay,
You got refunded your credit card. I thought I sent her an email.
Okay. That's kind of fun. Huh?
Thank you so much.
Okay, let me look at it.
It's gorgeous.
Oh, that's fun. Yeah, I think it could probably use a little bit more here, but yeah. So yeah, this is. And let me just show you a little bit of this little guy. I love this little guy. Let's just see what happens. Okay. I always tell my students, I'm like, don't get nervous, but we're about to do something really dramatic here. Okay, so I'm gonna carve away right here.
Camp Benoit?
Yeah, here I'm just like right in the. I mean, like all the booby traps in the world, right there. They're gonna hand me that copy. Keep it in my hands. Yes, well.
It's okay. Hey, this is a good
Paint is
Turn out
important.
quite as dramatic as I hoped, but with more layers, this could definitely be a fun little tool. But the paint's already starting to tack up, and I don't have multicolors underneath. But for those of you that want to increase the dramatic quality of this space, you can add more layers of acrylic paint underneath, and those acrylic colors will come through as you start to reveal it. Yeah, so Any questions? I think I might just kind of wrap up. Yeah.
Once you start mixing the wax on the subsequent layers, do you have to keep mixing the wax with the oil?
Yes.
Because you wouldn't want to do the oil on top of this base.
No. Anytime you're using oil, if you add a medium to it, then you can negate some of those fat over lean properties. But you typically want to stay with that medium as you're building. If not, you'll cause those different drying times, and those drying times will affect the stability of the paint film. So then you'll have cracking that will happen, or paint that will just... You can do oil sticks because they have binders in them, and they have a little bit of beeswax also, especially the R&F, because they're made for encaustics. But also, I forget what the other brand is, but yeah, paint sticks you can because of the binder quality of them.
Do you?
Yes.
How did you, so in your smaller version, you've got more colors in the background. How would you go in on this one and add more colors behind the deer without?
This one?
Yes, like without affecting the deer themselves.
So I'll show you. Well, that's tricky. So I do a lot of additive and subtractive method. So I'm usually not this neat of a painter. I usually, I will pull paint. Just for the sake of the demo, I'll show you guys. I will pull paint across forms, and I will break them down, and then I will build them back up with brushwork. And that keeps it with more abstract forms. Because right now this is kind of stiff, right? I mean, it's pleasing to the eye at a distance, but if we were to come up, it looks like something was pasted on. So if I want to add more layers of sophistication, now sometimes I can get carried away with that. I can overwork it. So I want to be careful, but that comes in more in the process making, that I need to refine that a little bit. But yeah, so something like that, I could take my stencil again and lay it back over and re-brayer over that, and I've got my deer back again. So it's a lot of going back and forth, and that's why I made the tracing paper of my stencil. So I will cut several deer out for one session of painting. If anybody finds a material I can use that's nice and thin and appropriate that won't tear, I would love to know what that is, but for the meantime, this is working fine for me. I don't mind sitting down. I sit down in the evening and go through and X-Acto knife the stencils out, and then I come up with other shapes and other ways. And another thing you could do is to give, let's do them real quick.
You could use freezer paper. Would that be a little bit?
Oh, freezer paper. I never thought wax paper.
Wax paper. Yeah, wax paper.
Wax paper.
Or parchment. Could you use your eraser on the deer that you just added to? Could you use your little rubber eraser on the deer?
Yeah, cut
as
it.
a takeaway?
Yes, you could. So that's a good point. So D. Dee mentioned carving away paint, so let's try that. So you can carve the paint away. So what's underneath is going to reveal a little bit. That is a possibility, of course. So scraping back down into the paint, and then of course, putting your stencil back on here. And I would have to do both stencils, but that is definitely a possibility, So all I would need to do is brayer the neck area. So let's just do that real quick. When I laid this paint on, it's a lot thicker, so it takes more paint to lay down on the deer. But you can see how you can preserve that again.
Yeah.
But then you can still get those abstract effects.
Yeah, textures.
Yes. So I'm going to take a Viva I don't know if anybody else uses Vivas.
Oh, yeah.
And for texturizing and just softening, but you can definitely do that with oils also. So it just softens the texture, but you can also use this kind of like a brayer effect where you put the paint into another area.
How fun.
Yeah, that's a fun little technique. Although the Vivas have this new pattern on them, which is a wave.
I know.
It's very disappointing. But I don't know. It just makes us try new things, I guess. So yeah. So any other questions?
Does the wax ever melt?
It
like if you're at a show and it's 100 degrees out,
No,
That's
once
a good
it's dry, yeah, it is a good question. Once it dries, it does harden. It takes a while for it to harden, but I always tell people that you don't want to put it in direct sunlight. Like if you have a beach house, you don't want it with the sun beaming on it all day. It's not going to melt it if you use it as a final finishing varnish, but something that's thick and has a lot of layers, it takes a little bit more time. But working on hardwood, that helps. Working on canvas, it takes a little bit longer. But you can also add Galca gel medium in there. It hasn't been really tested quite enough for people to really say that it is stable, but a lot of people do that. I don't, but I would think that if enough well-known artists are doing it, I think that it's stable enough for them to sell their paintings. No,
off your canvas or something.
No, not at all.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Did you ever come back over the stencil with another color?
Yes, I will go over it multiple times until I'm happy with it. And
So does it, I'm not used to working with oils, does it blend the colors or does it?
No. So it's gonna layer, but you have to decide, with oils, you have to decide where you want those underneath layers to reveal. If you want transparency, you want to use glazes. You can start to add colors on top that will give more of an optical effect where they'll have a blending. So like putting a red over a blue, you would get an optical mix of a green. And that's with glazes, but not with coal wax.
Coal wax, like if you came over here with like a lighter brown, just do the darker brown background, or would they blend together?
If you use enough cold wax, you can use it as a glaze, and yes, you can get some of that effect. You have to wait for the underneath layer to dry before you can do that. Yeah, yes. Yeah, any other questions? Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.